Now, I don't normally do this, but guys, buckle up. This video may be proving a shift in power in the AFC West. Sit back and enjoy.
Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months.
Kia ora, Bolt fam. It's the Director. Chargers fans, I got a fun one whipped up for you guys today. Our first tier list video of the season, going over the AFC West and every position therein. This division has turned into one of the most ridiculous that I have ever seen in terms of strength, in terms of talent. It is going to be an absolute battle getting into the postseason if you are a team in the AFC West. And I do think that has drawn a lot of eyes to this division as to who's going to stand on top. And that's going to be a very tricky question to answer throughout the year. Of course, I'm a Chargers YouTuber. We are hoping for the best. But at the same time, I wanted to take a look at all these teams and their positions and stack them up against each other to see maybe which team has the edge going into the season. Could this give us our first look at who we think takes the AFC West? I do think so, but at the same time, I think it's going to give us a better understanding of what we are dealing with. It should be a very fun one, man. How do the Chargers look in comparison to other AFC West teams? Because we know that the Chargers are looking as great as they've ever looked, but at the same time, man, every single other team in this division has loaded up as well. So it should be very interesting to see how this one stacks up. Before we do get started, guys, question in the comments, kind of throwing you guys for a loop here, not super Chargers related. Where do you think the Denver Broncos will place in the AFC West? First, second, third, or fourth? Let me know in the comment section below. This has probably been one of the trickiest teams in terms of placement that we've seen in a long time. Let me know what you think the new Russell Wilson team will look like in the AFC West. Before we do get started, guys, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. The small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into this one. Lights, camera,
Action.
Your AFC West full position rankings video. This should get interesting, man. As we're going along on this list, let me know if you guys would play certain players in different divisions. Of course, we've got S tier all the way down to D tier in how we are going to rank each and every position for all teams in the AFC West. And again, hopefully this experiment gives us a nice, I don't know, clue as to who may be the best team in the AFC West. Let's go ahead and start here. We have two different lists that we're going to go over, the offense and then, of course, the defense. Let's get things started here with the hottest position in the AFC West, one that has warranted a lot of conversation, the quarterback position, which is absolutely stacked in the division. Let's go ahead and start things off with Patrick Mahomes. We know that Patrick Mahomes, man, this dude's been doing it for a long time now. I do think we saw signs of weakness in the last season with the Chargers, at least throwing a lot of pressure at Mahomes. Did throw a lot of balls in the dirt and out of bounds. But at the same time, we still got to put Patrick Mahomes in the S tier, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And he's going to be the main reason why the Chiefs remain in contention going into the 2022 season. Of course, they did lose some pieces, but at the same time, Patrick Mahomes, we've seen him make a lot out of nothing. So Patrick Mahomes in the S tier. Next, let's go ahead and do Russell Wilson for me, because I do think this is one of the trickier positions, or one of the trickier players on this entire list. How is Russell Wilson gonna look? No, not D, no, not C. I think we're gonna put Russell Wilson in the A category for now. If you guys recall last season, Russell Wilson did not look like the Russell Wilson of old. I do think we saw maybe some signs of decline, maybe not meshing well with the current roster of Seattle Seahawks at the time. Coming to the Denver Broncos, I do think was a good move for him as a player, as I do see their roster as being more complete than the Seattle Seahawks. But will the talent of Russell Wilson of old come back with the Denver Broncos? We have to wait and see. So for now, we're going to go ahead and put Russell Wilson in the A tier. Next up, let's go ahead and do our boy here, Justin Herbert. Herbert, one of the more interesting stories in the NFL for very many years now. Where do we think Justin Herbert's going to be placed? We're going to put him right here in the star tier with Patrick Mahomes. And I do think after two very, very stellar seasons with the Chargers, people are starting to come around to Justin Herbert as possibly a top 5 quarterback in the league. I think by season's end, we could be talking top 3. And honestly, he's a player that has been challenging Patrick Mahomes for the top quarterback in the division. Justin Herbert, the best quarterback in NFL history so far in his career in his first 2 seasons. I do think he continues that trend in 2022, especially with so much help on offense and defense in terms of additions. And lastly, we're going to get Derek Carr in here. I know we have a lot of crap to sling at Derek Carr every other video, but we need to try and remain as unbiased as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and put him here in the B tier. Not quite the talent of a Russell Wilson, but definitely not the worst quarterback in the NFL either. I think Derek Carr has a chance with Davante Adams to step up his game and get into fringe A-tier territory, but I don't think Derek Carr has shown in his very lengthy career in the NFL to be anything super special in the NFL so far. But I will say that he is very serviceable and not bad in any means. So Derek Carr, we're going to put him there in the B tier. Next up, let's go ahead and rank our running backs. Let's do the running backs next, starting with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Edwards-Helaire, former first-round pick of the Chiefs. We've seen some on and off days with Helaire. I do think that he's okay in terms of what the Chiefs are running. They don't run the ball as often as other teams. They like to pass it, and Helaire is serviceable in those aspects, but I'm still going to put him in the C tier. I don't think in terms of an individual talent that he's super spectacular, and I think when you stack him up against the other running backs in the AFC West, he may end up being on the bottom. Next up, let's grab Josh Jacobs, who to me, again, a B tier running back. I think he's fringe A when he's having a good season, but lately we have been seeing the Raiders show a lack of trust in Josh Jacobs for whatever reason. They brought in Kenyon Drake. They just drafted another running back this season. I think in what I'm seeing in Josh Jacobs, he's pretty solid, but it also feels like the Raiders are looking to maybe replace him very soon. I think this might be his contract year with Vegas. Next up, Javonte Williams. I'm going to go ahead and put Williams up here, man. I'm going to put Williams in the A tier. I know just a couple of seasons into the NFL, but at the same time, man, from what I've seen from Javonte Williams so far, I've been very impressed with, and I do think in a system like what the Denver Broncos like to run, especially now that you've got yourself a mobile quarterback in Russell Wilson, we should see a very solid season from him. So I'm going to put him fringe A, fringe B, but I'm going to say that at least the lower part of the A tier for me is going to be Javonte Williams. And then finally, we do have Austin Eckler, who in my opinion, Austin Eckler, perhaps the best running back in this division, definitely has earned his stripes. 20 touchdowns last season. He's very good on the ground, but especially good in the passing game as well. So we're going to put Austin Eckler as the best running back on this list. I'm going to put him in the upper tier of the A tier here. Austin Eckler, fantastic. He's going to be one of those guys talked about in the first round of many people's fantasy football leagues this season. Let's slow things down a little bit here and talk a bit about the offensive line next. Starting with the Kansas City Chiefs, I do have a roster that I'm looking at in terms of depth chart as well as we're going along in this video. We do have only one player representing each team in some cases, like the offensive line, defensive line, etc., etc. The offensive line for the Chiefs, who does feature Orlando Brown Jr. They also have Joe Thuney, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, and Andrew Wiley. I'm going to have to put these guys, man, in the lower A tier. This offensive line, which we thought was falling apart last season, has turned around into one of the better offensive lines in the league. And again, this is going to play in part to why Patrick Mahomes should have a good season and maybe, just maybe, move Eckler up this list a little bit as the year goes on. I do think they have a nice offensive line. Just kind of determines or just kind of depends on his individual talent, but the Chiefs have themselves a nice O-line. Next up, let's do the Denver Broncos. Featured here with Garrett Bowles. They've also got Dalton Reisner, Lloyd Cushenberry, Graham Gladskow, and Billy Turner. I've got to put them in the C tier, man, the lower C tier. I know that the offensive line for this team has been a problem for a couple of seasons now. This may be the one thing that Russell Wilson was trying to escape when a member of the Seattle Seahawks, their offensive line was way worse. But at the same time, it could be worse. I'm not going to quite put them D, but at the same time, I think they need a lot of help, a lot of improvements in years to come. Then lastly, the Raiders, or I should say second to last, the Raiders offensive line, which features Colton Miller, Denzel Good, Andre James, Jermaine Elamnor, and Alex Leatherwood. I got to put these guys in the D tier, man. I think they do have the worst offensive line in the AFC West. It could be a lot worse. We see teams in the NFL that do feature way worse offensive linemen, but I think in terms of this division, the Raiders are on the bottom. And then as for the Chargers, we're going to sneak them just ahead of the Kansas City Chiefs in terms of their offensive line. Of course, we've got Rashawn Slater, Matt Filer, Corey Linsley, and Zion Johnson, four of some of the best offensive linemen you're going to find in the NFL. The only thing that's kind of drawing us back from maybe S-tier, fringe S-tier contention is that right tackle spot. Everything outside of that, this Chargers offensive line is looking very, very good. Next up, let's go to the big boys, the big receivers, and the tight ends. How do the AFC West tight ends stack up? Let's start off here with the Denver Broncos because they did move on from Noah Fant, who is now a member of the Seattle Seahawks. Now step in his position, Albert Okwegbuonam. I apologize. I have no idea how to pronounce this man's name, but I'm going to have to put him here in the D tier as well, just because we have no idea. He could be very good. I would say maybe more realistically, he's the bottom part of the C tier, but going from Noah Fant to Albert now, I don't know if it's going to be a smooth transition at the position of tight end for the Broncos this season. They did draft Greg Dulcich, who I do think could step in and take that role, but until then, that's one of the bigger weaknesses for the Denver Broncos going into the 2022 season. Let's go ahead and just throw Travis Kelsey here into the S tier as well. Travis Kelsey, perhaps a top 2 or 3 tight end in the league. You could make the argument for the best tight end in the league right now. Maybe slowed down a little bit last season, but it's Travis Kelsey that we're talking about. He belongs here in the S tier. No explanation required. Next up, let's go ahead and grab Darren Waller of the Vegas Raiders. We're going to put him here in the upper A tier, right next to Russell Wilson. I do think definitely one of these guys that exploded onto the scene. Darren Waller, very consistent. As long as he's on the field, he's definitely one of the better, or one of the best, I should say, tight ends in the league. And then finally, the Chargers. You know, I really struggled with Gerald Everett. We also do have Donald Parham. I feel like the Chargers should be top C, fringe B. I'm going to go ahead and put them at the top of C for now. I do think that Gerald Everett's going to be a big upgrade over Jared Cook last season. You could definitely make a case for the lower part of B, in my opinion, but at the same time, we have to see it on the field. I think Gerald Everett brings a lot to the Chargers in terms of yards after the catch, in terms of consistency and youth. So again, this one was very, very tough for me, but I do think we're going to put him in C just for now. And then finally, probably one of the more exciting positions in the AFC West, the wide receivers, of which pretty much every team has got themselves some solid talent. We're going to start here with the Denver Broncos with Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton. I think Sutton's kind of slept on, in my opinion. I think he's a very nice wide receiver and good, tall possession kind of guy. And then Jerry Jeudy, coming into a couple seasons into the NFL now, I feel like he should see a lot of improvements with Russell Wilson at quarterback. So I'm going to go ahead and put them right here next to Austin Eckler in the A tier. That should be a very nice duo for Russell Wilson, coming away from Seattle and now a member of the Denver Broncos. Next up, let's do the Kansas City Chiefs, which now features Mecole Hardman and Juju Smith-Schuster. I'm going to have to put these two down here. either in the D or the lower C tier. I'm going to put the C tier for now, the lowest C tier, fringe D tier, just because Mecole Hardman, definitely fast, but does struggle in a lot of other areas. And then Juju Smith-Schuster, once a superstar with the Pittsburgh Steelers, has seen much better years. Can he turn it around with Patrick Mahomes? I think there's a case to be made there, of course. You know, old Big Ben Roethlisberger was definitely struggling the last couple of seasons, but it does feel like the Steelers themselves were steering away from Juju Smith-Schuster, the player. So we're going to put them at the bottom of the AFC West in terms of wide receivers. They do have a really nice tight end, which I do believe they're going to lean on quite a bit. But in terms of wide receiver, it's definitely looked a lot better in years past, especially with Tyreek Hill last season. You could massage a lot of those, issues. Not anymore. I think this could be the Achilles heel of the Kansas City Chiefs going in the 2022 season. Next up, let's do the Chargers here. I think the Chargers definitely boast one of the best wide receiver duos in the league. We're going to put them in the A tier with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Actually, we'll probably just edge that right ahead of Austin Eckler, maybe even ahead. Now we're going to keep him right there. We're going to keep him right there of Darren Waller. Mike Williams, Keenan Allen. The reason why Mike Williams was re-signed this last season, of course, consistency is a very big thing, but also I just feel like this, wide receiver one numbers that we've been seeing the last couple of seasons definitely warrant a very big talent in Mike Williams, who's definitely that possession catch kind of guy, or contested, I should say. And then Keenan Allen's been as good as ever. The Chargers wide receivers definitely very, very impressive. And then lastly, we've got the Raiders, who I unfortunately have to put in just ahead of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. They got themselves Hunter Renfrow, who's a very underrated wide receiver in the league. And then, of course, Davante Adams, who him and Cooper Kupp are 1A, 1B for the best wide receiver in the NFL. That's kind of how we're shaking out here with the offense. Definitely very interesting to see things shake out. And this A tier right here is definitely very telling of the situation for the AFC West right now. Lots and lots of players in here. I think it's going to come down to mainly who's got less players in the B, C, and D tier. Of course, the Broncos and the Raiders suffering in tight end and offensive line. We'll come visit that again in just a moment to kind of get our consensus feel of where we think teams are in terms of position or rankings in the AFC West. Okay, so this is going to be your offense. Let's move on to the defense now. I know a little bit of a lengthier video today, but certainly one that's very fun and exciting. We're going to start off here with probably the hottest position in the division for most teams right now, right? At least for a lot of teams in terms of, the talented players that we do see in that. And that's going to be your edge rushers. This feels like one of the most aggressive reaches for a position in a long time in terms of a division. Everybody was looking for edge rushers to get to these premier quarterbacks in the AFC West. So let's go ahead and start here with the Chiefs. I'm going to actually put them here at the bottom. I think the Chiefs' defense is going to be a big reason why they may struggle to hang on to that number one spot in the AFC West. This features Frank Clark and George Karlaftis, I think, which was recently drafted this past season. The edge rush position, I feel like Frank Clark has seen a sharp decline. He was one of those cut candidates that we were talking about earlier this season. I think they're going to struggle to get to the quarterback from the edge position this season, and that's why we're going to put them here at the lower C. I actually had them almost D tier, but we're going to put them in the low C tier because I do like George Karlaftis quite a bit. We have to wait and see how he transitions into the NFL. Next up, Max Crosby and Chandler Jones for the Vegas Raiders. We do have to put that in the S tier. That is quite the ridiculous pairing. When we were talking about Chandler Jones, being signed by another team, we're all very much so hoping that they wouldn't go to an AFC West Division rival. And lo and behold, he landed in a very dangerous spot if you're a Chargers, Chiefs, or Broncos fan, because they already had Max Crosby. And Max Crosby, man, gave the Chargers a lot of issues last season. I think this combination of Chandler Jones and Max Crosby is going to be an issue for every other team in the AFC West. And this is why the offense position rankings here for the offensive line was so important. The Chargers and the Chiefs have a really good chance at slowing that down. But if you're a Raiders or Broncos fan, you got to watch out. You're going to see a lot of heat in the area of Derek Carr and Russell Wilson, okay? Next up, let's go ahead and grab the Denver Broncos, who I'm going to go ahead and put in the A tier. They've got themselves a very nice pass rushing duo in Randy Gregory and Bradley Chubb. Randy Gregory, kind of a crazy story, right? Coming back to the NFL. He looked fantastic with the Cowboys last year. Now a free agent signing of the Denver Broncos. And as long as Bradley Chubb is on the field, he's a very, very good pass rusher as well. So we're going to go ahead and put them in the A tier. And then finally, we're going to save the best for last. Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, the top of the top of the top in terms of edge position or position rankings for the AFC West defenses. Absolutely stellar and ridiculous. Bosa and Mack, of course, Crosby and Chandler Jones are going to be very good. That's hence why they are in the S tier. But Bosa and Mack is one of the most ridiculous pairings that I've seen from the edge position in a very, very long time. Definitely rivaling that of Aaron Donald and Von Miller last season. I think that may have been just a bit better, but that was pretty ridiculous. Now we got Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, who's going to take the top spot on this list. Next up, let's talk a little bit about the cornerbacks. Let's do it, man. Cornerbacks also a very, very big position that's been talked about in the AFC West because, again, these edge rushers going to come after the quarterback. These wide receiver or these cornerbacks and safeties need to be able to take the ball away via bad decisions from the pass rush. So let's go ahead and start here at the Denver Broncos. The Broncos featuring, again, we have one player representing a position here. You got themselves Patrick Surtain. They got Ronald Darby, Quan Williams, Damari Mathis. I'm still going to put them in the A tier, the lower A tier, because I think outside of Pat Surtain, maybe not as good as we've seen in years past, but at the same time, Surtain is very, very good. One of the top cornerbacks in the NFL, the AFC West certainly, but the NFL too. I do think that that's a very nice foundation for that position group in Pat Surtain. Next up, the Kansas City Chiefs, who do feature in terms of cornerbacks, L'Jarius Sneed, Trent McDuffie, the rookie, who I'm very high on, Rashad Fenton, and DeAndre Baker. We're going to go ahead and put them in the B tier. Okay, because L'Jarius Sneed I do like a lot. Trent McDuffie, a rookie, I'm very high on him, which is why they're top B, fringe A for me, but I'm going to put them in the B right now because we need to see more from him in terms of his transition to the NFL. But L'Jarius Sneed, definitely their best corner on the roster right now. Definitely could be better, but again, this is where things are important, man. From B to D, who doesn't have the advantage in terms of, the AFC West, because everybody's so loaded at pretty much every position. Next up, let's go ahead and do the Chargers, man. We got ourselves J.C. Jackson. We're actually going to etch him in. Actually, you know what? We're going to put them ahead of the Raiders pass rush. We're going to go ahead and put the Chargers the Chargers cornerbacks featuring J.C. Jackson. Of course, you've got Asante Samuel Jr., now Bryce Callahan and Michael Davis. This is without a doubt the deepest cornerback room in the AFC West, and also without a doubt the most talented. Pat Surtain, J.C. Jackson, both very, very good, but I think J.C. Jackson is just more than proven as one of the top corners in the NFL. Not only that, you do have the depth with Bryce Callahan, Michael Davis. This is something the Chargers haven't had in a long time. And so far, so good, man. This Chargers defense, 2 positions in the S tier, looking like, at the moment, the best defense in the AFC West. And then finally, we got the Raiders secondary in terms of their cornerbacks, featuring Trayvon Mullen, Rock Ya-Sin, Anthony Averett, and Nate Hobbs. Hobbs is probably the best one. Rock Ya-Sin is kind of a wild card for me. He was okay with the Colts. I'm going to have to put them right now in the lower C. Fringe D, as a matter of fact. Yeah, I got to keep them in the lower C because I think Rock Ya-Sin, Nate Hobbs kind of saved them from the D tier to me, but this is certainly one of the weakest positions on the Raiders defensive roster. If you're a Chargers fan, a Chiefs fan, a Broncos fan, you should get a little excited when playing the Raiders in terms of, slicing and dicing up their secondary, especially with everybody having such nice weapons in terms of wide receivers and tight ends. So we're going to keep them there at the C tier, the bottom C tier. That could be one of the Achilles heels for the Raiders this season. Next up, let's move on to defensive line, starting with the Denver Broncos, who just signed DJ Jones, a former San Francisco 49er. They also have Mike Purcell and Draymond Jones. A couple other names behind him, too, that I kind of like, but at the same time, it could be better. I'm going to go ahead and put them in the top C, the upper C, fringe B for me, because I do like DJ Jones a lot. I think he's going to offer a lot in terms of stopping the run from the interior of that 3-4 defense. Have to keep that in mind, guys. Every defense is a little bit different. 3-4 for the Denver Broncos. So we're going to put them in the upper C tier. Definitely could be worse, but definitely not too bad as well. The Kansas City Chiefs, who do operate in 4-3, we're going to go ahead and highlight here Chris Jones, Frank Clark, which we're going to be putting the edge rushers, Derek Nandi as well. I'm going to have to go ahead and put them in the lower A tier. I think that Nandi is not bad, but definitely Chris Jones, very, very good in the NFL, one of the better interior defensive linemen in the NFL. And he has given us problems in the past. So we're going to go ahead and put him in the lower A tier. Still a very, very nice player. And then the Vegas Raiders we'll do next here. Vegas Raiders in terms of defensive linemen. They operate in base 4-3. We already talked about Max Crosby and Chandler Jones who are going to be on the edge. They do have Jonathan Hankins and Bilal Nichols as well. We're going to have to go ahead and put them probably in the D fringe. I'm going to put them in the D for now because Jonathan Hankins, Bilal Nichols, I think we've seen some stuff from them, but definitely not one that I absolutely, feel needs any attention when going into game day. Maybe we put them in the C because I do know Jonathan Hankins is not bad. Bilal Nichols, to me, I'm actually not as well versed in. We're going to put him in the lower C. Now we're going to have to put him in the D because, again, when going up against the rest of the AFC West, I just don't know if they stack up. So the Raiders seeing some issues on defense already with their cornerbacks and defensive linemen in the C and D category. And then finally, the Chargers, we're going to put them in the upper B category. I know everybody wants to see them in terms of, improvement against the run, improvement, and try and generate some pressure from the interior defensive line position, maybe in the lower A tier, but we have to wait and see. But I still think that they deserve an upper B tier ranking with Sebastian Joseph Day, Austin Johnson. They still do have Jerry Tillery in there, and then, of course, a slew of pretty nice depth pieces and guys like Fayoko and Agbonia and stuff like that. I think Austin Johnson went on the field a very, very nice in terms of a nose tackle, in terms of a guy that you can move around. Austin Johnson should bring a huge improvement. Jerry Tillery, as long as he's on this list, as far as the Chargers depth chart, I don't know if I could move the Chargers into the A tier. Unless we see something crazy from Tillery this season, this is the one factor holding me back from putting him into the lower A tier. So, Chargers defensive line looking vastly improved this season. Next up, let's take a look at the linebackers. And again, this is also kind of tricky because everybody operates in different defense in terms of 3-4, 4-3. But let's go ahead and start here with the Denver Broncos. This unit does feature Josie Jewell, who was definitely not bad last season, Alex Singleton, Justin Strand. I'm going to have to go ahead and put them maybe in the middle of the C tier, not quite the bottom. Let's go ahead and put them right here in the C tier in terms of their linebackers. I know that Josie Jewell was definitely stepping up last season, but they lost another guy, I don't remember his name, who is definitely nice in that inside linebacker spot as well. Could be better, could be worse, but definitely not a strength of the Denver Broncos. As for the Kansas City Chiefs, who operate in 4-3, they got Nick Bolton, Jermaine Carter, and Willie Gay. I actually do like Nick Bolton quite a bit. I know Willie Gay's been on the rise, and then we have Jermaine Carter as well. We're going to go ahead and put them in the middle of the B tier, I think. They're great, but not elite in my opinion. They're pretty good, I should say. So we're going to go ahead and put the Chiefs right there. The Chargers, who do feature, of course, Drew Tranquil and Kenneth Murray, who Kenneth Murray had a really difficult season last year. We're going to have to put him fringe, upper C, lower B. I got to put him in the upper C. I think they're probably the better of the C category right there. Kenneth Murray, I do think is going to have a bounce back season. Drew Tranquil's so good, though, too. I think we got to put him lower B. Because Drew Tranquil, definitely one of those steals in drafts past. Definitely one of those better guys. Maybe the guy we should have featured in terms of the player on the art here. But still, I think the Chargers will not be utilizing their linebacker position as much this season. So we shouldn't be too worried about that. But when we do see Tranquil and Murray on the field, I don't think we have much to worry about. So we're going to put them in the lower B tier for this video. And then finally, the Raiders, who do feature, let's go ahead and get their depth chart up here, Denzel Perryman, Jayon Brown, and I think that's it, right? Yeah. They got a couple of guys in there too, Micah Kaiser, et cetera. Kyler Fackrell, who they did take from the Chargers. We're going to go ahead and put them in the lower B2. Actually, we're going to put them right ahead of the Chargers here. Denzel Perryman had a very solid season with them last year. I know it hurt a lot of Chargers fans. And then Jayon Brown, I think, has a good chance at being very serviceable for them this season. So definitely not too bad. Next up, let's get into the defensive backs, right? Yeah, let's finish off the safeties here before we even talk about the special teams. We'll just kind of throw the special teams on there at the end. Safeties. This is another position where it's kind of make or break for the AFC West division, right? I feel like most teams have a very, very nice safety. If you're kind of left in the dark without a good safety, good luck to you. Let's start here with the Chiefs, whose safeties are going to be Juan Thornhill and a recent add in Justin Reed. I'm going to go ahead and put them. I think Juan Thornhill was pretty good last season. We got to put them in the B tier. I'm going to actually put it here ahead of the of their linebackers. I think that's where it feels pretty good. The Chiefs have a lot of different positions in the B tier right there. Juan Thornhill, definitely serviceable. Justin Reed used to be very good with the Texans. Since then, he kind of fell off. A lot of people are talking that it's the Texans' problem or the Texans' fault for not utilizing him properly. So maybe he does see a bounce back here with the Chiefs. Till then, I'm going to put them in the B category. Might actually move them down a bit. Let's go ahead and move them down here to maybe just ahead of their cornerbacks, I think. Feels very appropriate. Next up, let's go ahead and do the Raiders, who do feature Trayvon Moehrig and Jonathan Abram. I think Moehrig and Abram, again, those guys can be very good. We're going to go ahead and put them just ahead of the Chiefs safeties right there. I think that, no, man, because Jonathan Abram usually has some injury problems. He's struggled in coverage. I think Trayvon Mullen was the best of them, so I'm going to put them right underneath the Chiefs, actually. Yeah, right underneath the Chiefs safety. I think that feels pretty good right there. And then finally, the Denver Broncos. We got to put this man right here in the lower A. I know that he's not as good as he's been in the past in terms of Justin Simmons. They also have Kareem Jackson out there, but he's still one of the better in the NFL. So I feel like Justin Simmons definitely belongs in the A tier. And then finally, Derwin James. Derwin, it's hard not to put him and Nasir Adderley above like the top player on this list, but Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack is one of the biggest duos I've ever seen in the NFL. So we're going to put them right underneath. We're going to put Derwin James and Nasir Adderley right underneath Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, and right above J.C. Jackson and the slew of other Chargers corners. Probably the best defensive back in the league in terms of safeties for Derwin James. He's going to look absolutely fantastic with the Chargers this season, who've added so much help in that secondary. The Chargers talked a lot about getting Justin Herbert and Derwin James help, and they definitely delivered on both ends there. And then finally, we're just going to throw the special teams on here because I said every position, so we're going to go ahead and throw a position group. So we're going to go ahead and throw the special teams on here as well. Not super well versed in all these guys' stats and grades and stuff like that, but from what my eyes tell me as a fan, McManus is good. Butker is, and that special teams unit is, bottom A. Chargers probably upper C. And then Raiders probably upper B as well. So that's where I'm going to put the special teams, okay? Very simple explanation. So finally, with all these thrown together, what is kind of my consensus feelings of the AFC West? Well, starting off here with the offense, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelsey, definitely 2-star studded category, players right there. They're going to give people issues. They also have a very decent offensive line, but they do struggle in terms of skill positions in wide receivers and running backs. So keep that in mind. The biggest thing keeping them in contention is going to be Mahomes, their tight end, and their offensive line. The Broncos, they got themselves a nice quarterback. They got a nice running attack. They got nice wide receivers, but they do struggle in terms of offensive line and tight end. And then, of course, you got the Raiders, who are kind of all over the place. No star players. I think their closest star player duo, it could have been, you got to actually put these guys at the top of A. I almost forgot to do that. I think Devontae Adams and Hunter Renfrow fringe A. You could make an argument for it. I got to do it. I got to put them at the bottom of star, okay? Just because Devontae Adams is such a difference maker as an individual player. Let's go ahead and put the Raiders their biggest weakness is going to be offensive line, but they're pretty solid everywhere else. But that quarterback differentiation is going to be a big thing this season for them. Derek Carr is not Patrick Mahomes. He's not Russell Wilson. He's not Justin Herbert. I think that could bump everybody down a tier in terms of what they're going to be working with. But I don't know. Derek Carr's not bad. He's definitely serviceable, but definitely the lowest in the AFC West. Then looking at the defense, this is where things get very exciting, and I'm going to do an individual video on this a little bit later. The Chargers ran away with this one. Bosa, Mack, Derwin, JC, and then all the other cornerbacks. Absolutely ridiculous. That defense at every level has some very big players to work with. And the Chargers, in terms of talent, are standing on top. They also got themselves a very nice defensive line here in the upper B category. Actually move him down here because he's not like it's special teams, right? They got okay, linebackers. I think where they're going to struggle a little bit in terms of this list, I don't know, man. They seem very well-rounded altogether. The Raiders, who have a great pass rush, they've got decent linebackers, but then everywhere else they're kind of struggling. Safety, especially corner and defensive line. Not great, man. The Chiefs have themselves a very good defensive lineman in Clark. Good special teams, very B tier for almost everything else, and then almost, bottom of the list here in terms of pass rush. That could be the biggest weakness of them. And then finally, the Broncos, kind of mid-tier everywhere, right? They got themselves, Justin Simmons. They got, a lot of nice A-tier players. Maybe struggle a little bit in terms of linebacker and defensive line, but they're pretty nice as well. So I think in terms of offense, let's start with that there. I think you got to give it first to... This is really tough, man, on the spot. It's really close between everybody, but I think the Chargers just edged it out here with Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, and Justin Herbert in the S tier. And they also have their offensive line in the A tier as well. After that, I think you're looking at the Raiders, who actually have, very nice wide receiver, tight end, and running back. Then the Broncos, and then the Chiefs, which is very shocking because the Chiefs, they've got Travis Kelsey, and that's about it. So in terms of offense, it's going to go Chargers, Raiders, Broncos, and then Chiefs. Defense, we're going to go Chargers again. That feels so biased. I'm trying not to be biased here. Maybe the Raiders do have the best pieces in terms of offensive weapons, but they don't have a quarterback. I'm going to stick to it. I'm going to say the Chargers, in terms of defense, probably the best in the league too. Or in the division too. They're just so stacked on this S tier. Everybody else here is kind of existing in the B tier, which is definitely not bad. After that, I got to give it to probably the Broncos, who have a nice, solid, roster of edge rushers, cornerbacks, defensive backs in general, with the safeties as well. And then the rest of everybody. The only struggles here is defensive linemen and linebacker. This is very tough, man. This is very tough. Let me know in the comment section below what you guys are thinking. I didn't expect it to be this hard. I was like, maybe we'll have like a kind of an idea at the end. No, this is really tough with how close everybody is. So consensus-wise, I think you kind of got to give it to the Chargers and then the Chiefs because of Patrick Mahomes. And then the Broncos and then the Raiders. Let me know in the comment section below. I think this is what this video is kind of turned into. What do you guys think? Kind of our first sneak peek. I think the Chargers have made a very solid case for the best team in the AFC West, but it's going to be tough until we see it kind of come together on, the field. It looks great on paper, but until we see it come together on the field, we just don't know. Let me know, guys. Let me know. This is what we're looking at in terms of position rankings. I think every team's going to have their weakness. The Chiefs don't have offensive weapons. They struggle in terms of pass rush. The Raiders' quarterback situation, not as good as everybody else, but not bad. They have a terrible offensive line, terrible defensive backs, defensive line. The Broncos look pretty solid all around. Would I be shocked to see them take second place? No, but it's such a weird and stacked division. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think just in my gut and from what I'm seeing here in these position rankings, I'm going to give it to the Chargers. Wow. I'm giving it to the Chargers, then the Broncos, then the Chiefs, then the Raiders. That's nuts. Again, I'm doing this on the spot. I'm trying to remain unbiased, but just looking at what these lists have kind of produced, that's kind of what I'm feeling. That's kind of what I'm feeling. Chargers, Broncos, Chiefs, Raiders. What do you guys think in the comment section below? Kind of an off-the-cuff video, I know, but I think it was kind of fun, right? Kind of a brain teaser going through all of this, kind of understanding all the positions for the entire AFC West, and it really does give us a good picture of what we're dealing with here. If any team adds another player, obviously this kind of stuff changes. If the Chargers add Akeem Hicks, they're probably coming up here, but things could change, right? So just let me know in the comment section below what you guys think. I think a very interesting one for today. Well, guys, again, let me know where you think the Broncos are going to place. In my prediction, I'm going to say they're going to end second with the Chargers in first. Surprisingly enough, the biggest shock would probably be the Chiefs falling to third. But again, just looking at these lists, I feel like they have some Achilles heels in here. No pass rush. They struggle in their secondary a little bit, and no weapons on offense. Kind of crazy to see. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. If you did like what you saw here, hit us up with a like and sub on your way out. We'll see you next time, and as always, bolt up and stay frosty. One of the longest videos out here, man, but man, this was kind of fun.